Right. So, Jerry, welcome to the Black and Raw podcast. It's really good to have you on.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
No, that's cool. That's cool. Um, it was quite odd when we first chatted because you said aloha to me, and I was like, did he know that I just came from Hawaii? Like, what does he know? um, but I heard you guys were having some wildfires recently, so I hope you and your family are all good. I know you live on a farm as well, so you might be a bit more exposed there. But was it on your island? Was it not on the island you were on?
No, the major fires that occurred were on the island of Maui, and I'm on the Big Island. And in fact, I'm on the south side of the Big Island. There were some fires on the north side of the island. Um, Actually, one place that I went on my anniversary, if the I haven't seen it for myself, but if the facts are true, or what people are telling me are true, it's like the place that I went on vacation with my wife actually was affected by some fire. But other than that, the Big Island was fine compared to Maui.
Yeah.
So yeah, me and my family are safe. We're okay.
No, that's good. That's good. Is Maui sort of more, I guess, Big Island when I went, like, even though it's sort of like an island, like it sort of feels like a little city. But then you do have like the beach and the ocean just sort of close to you. So I don't know whether maybe it's because it's more concrete. I don't know. I don't know whether because of how Maui is, maybe it's more exposed to those sort of things.
Um, well, the Big Island, it's big. It's compared to the other islands. In fact, all the other islands can actually fit inside the Big Island.
Wow.
That said, it's very rural and spread out. So there are two towns or cities, Hilo and Kona, but they're about Hilo's like an hour away from me, and Kona's like 2.5 hours away from me. So it's a pretty big island.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Mhm.
And so you know what? I would actually, while we're on it, we might as well start here in terms of you didn't always live in Hawaii. And I guess I wanted to know sort of what was your life like before moving to Hawaii?
Depends when in my life you're asking, uh, but before moving here, I was living in Chicago with my wife and one of my sons, um, and we moved here to the Big Island in March of 21. But before Chicago, I lived in New York City for a good chunk of my career, and then I was raised in Texas, and I lived in Texas, I don't know, till I was like 26 or 27 or something. And then I moved to New York. Spent a lot of time in New York and then Chicago. And then
No.
now I'm living that island life.
Yeah, you've done a few little hops to be fair, like Texas
Yeah.
to New York, New York to Chicago. Um, what was, I guess, just like just me being sort of interested, like
Mhm.
what were the sort of differences between the Texas, Chicago, and New York? I mean, I think Hawaii we probably know the differences, but
um, that's a great question, actually. I mean, I can only give my perception and my opinion. But I mean, I grew up in the suburbs of Houston. Um, Houston's one of the most, if not the most, one of the most ethnically diverse cities in the country.
okay.
I grew up around Nigerians and Filipinos and all that type of stuff, Chinese folks and all that. But mostly, I mean, mostly white. I mean, you can't expect anything less than that. But it was very diverse. I grew up in a very diverse area in a town called Sugarland, and
Interesting name.
yeah, I grew up in Sugarland, Texas, and it used to be sugar plantations back in the day. And when it got incorporated as a company town, it became Sugarland, what we know today. But it's now one of the most wealthiest cities or suburbs, I should say, one of the wealthiest suburbs in the country.
Wow, no
And
correlation there or anything, is there?
because it's so sweet. Yeah. Actually, Imperial Sugar is from my hometown. But anyways, so I grew up there, and then I went to college in East Texas, which was which was I loved it. I had a good time there. I thought it was a pretty good mix of white and black, and
Mm.
I went to a pretty diverse school if you want to go that route. Um, and Yeah, I think it was like a third Hispanic, a third black, a third white type of
Oh, that's a
situation.
nice little mix. You got sort of flavors everywhere. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It was a small town, everybody got along type of thing. Most of the people in that city were from the school. It was
yeah.
that type of town.
Everybody knew each
And
other. Like,
everybody
yeah,
exactly. Like if you didn't know somebody, you knew their crew. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. Fair enough.
Um, and and then while I was there, I was studying broadcasting, and that's when I got into radio and television and all that type of stuff, and really launched my career in entertainment. And
Yeah,
then from there, I moved on to New York City.
fair enough.
Yeah,
Was New York? I guess New York was sort of like the hub of maybe like the creative industry of everything that was. I don't know. Is that how it was? Like, sort of
yeah.
everything was
Well,
happening at that time in New York, and it's New York though, isn't it? Like,
it's New York.
it's a city
I
that
mean,
doesn't sleep. Like,
yeah, city is if if you want to be a part of any industry, you can find it in New York.
mm,
Specifically for me, I was in entertainment. I was done with radio when I moved to New York. I was like, well, I want to pursue acting, and I got the scholarship to go to an acting conservatory out there, and yeah, I just loved it. I loved it when I was
nice.
there. Yeah.
What
Uh,
can I ask? What made you want to switch from radio to acting? Because
that's a good question.
some people are like, oh, you've got a face for the radio, you've got a voice for the radio, but and then you can
Yeah.
be an actor. Not saying you don't
Yeah.
have a face to be an actor, but but go on, I digress.
Yeah. Well, actually, when I got into broadcasting, I actually had the intention of being on TV news. So
Mm,
I always had the intention of being in front of the camera. Um, but but I fell in love with radio. I just when I had to take some radio classes, just the editing process, audio was just this new thing to me. Well, it wasn't new per se, but it was just wow, just being behind and pressing the buttons, making sure people are listening to whatever song and
mm.
this and the other. I just fell in love with it. And when I graduated from college, I immediately went to work for Clear Channel Radio and became a local radio DJ and a local celebrity even. Well, while I was working for Clear Channel, I quickly realized I don't like working corporate.
Okay,
And
that's what it
so
was.
that's what it was. Yeah. So I was like, oh, and I realized like at the time podcasting was like very new. It
Mm,
was very new. I think the iPod was brand new.
wow.
So it wasn't that wasn't necessarily an option. Although looking back, I'm like, I mean, I had a podcast back then, but looking back, I'm like, I wish I would have stuck with it. But back then, there was no
You could have
reason to
not
believe
known.
there was no
Yeah.
reason to believe that that was going to be it because I was just doing it for fun with my friend, kind of like Joe Rogan was back
Mm,
then. But I had to make a living, right? I had to make a life and all that type of stuff. And I wasn't really doing it was a hobby. I don't know. I don't know how you get into it, but really what happened was when I was working in radio, I was doing the podcast and they told me if I wanted to continue working at the radio station, I had to quit my podcast. So I was like, all right, well, I stopped the podcast and continued
Why
doing
though? Did
competition.
oh
Competition.
you were providing competition for your own job?
Yeah, exactly. It was like, moonlighting and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so I mean, I love them. No animosity at all. But when I realized that I wasn't going to like have a good time in corporate, like I tried to compel them or convince them that
Mm,
me doing the podcast was actually was mutually beneficial but they didn't see that at the time. They also didn't see the benefits of using Facebook for marketing,
Yeah.
which today
Yeah.
is like, it's ridiculous. But back then I was like, it's free. Like I could post back then you could post anything you wanted on Facebook, and people were following me already. I had groups, all that type of stuff, because I thought it was fun. And so I had people listening to me
Yeah.
because I had my Facebook group and all that type of stuff.
Easy
Anyways,
easy advertising.
easy advertising. And they were trying to pay these other, third-party organizations a lot of money to do what I was doing for free through Facebook.
Yeah.
And now, look at us now, right? There's times when I look back, I'm like, man, I wish I would have just stuck to my guns, but I was like a young 20-year-old, I didn't know anything.
Yeah, you can never know the trends, can you? Like I feel like sometimes it just takes some luck for, like, there's just some people that are able to catch on to those trends and be like, okay, I'm gonna stick with it, or they just get lucky and they just kept doing it and they're like, oh, this is a trend now. Okay, I guess I'm here. I've been doing it, so
yeah. Exactly. But to answer your question about moving to New York, it was like the best next option for me, because one, I had that acting scholarship that I had won. So after I had quit radio, I decided to pursue acting, had a manager. She put me through this competition, got the scholarship, and I moved to New York City like 4 weeks after I got the scholarship. And
nice.
I just fell in love with the city, fell in love with the culture. I loved my time in New York, and I did many things. It wasn't just acting. I was also producing and writing. I did a little bit of comedy, did work for Funny or Die, College Humor. I did work for BBC America. I did work for, New York City Comic Con. Those are just the big names. I did a lot of small projects and things like that as well. Yeah, man, I worked in marketing as well. As because I needed something that would supplement my living in New York, so I needed a real big boy job. And, so that's how I got into marketing. And then in 2015, I didn't like living in New York anymore. I couldn't deal with it, and I was also going through a spiritual awakening at the time.
Okay.
And it just, a lot of things became very apparent to me around 2014, 2015.
What changed for you, would you say? Like, what was it that you maybe started seeing as a bit different?
A lot of things. One of which, I guess the main big point, was realizing that, how do I say this? I realized that there was a lot more going on in the world than we were being told. I always had my suspicions about how things work in the world. But yeah, around 2014, I started waking up to the fact that I am more than just this Black guy here, living in New York. I started realizing that there was a spirit to me. And as I started waking up to this idea of that my imagination creates reality, and this and the other, I started realizing that, like, a lot of the things I had been creating in my life unconsciously were actually affecting me negatively. And so I don't know, I just couldn't live in New York anymore. It was just the appeal of New York City just didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
Nothing really made sense to me at the time. So I moved back to Texas for a very short bit of time to recollect myself and, like, who am I?
Yeah.
I was like, 2015 was a year of, like, who am I? Like, I thought I was this whole different thing. I thought I was going in a whole direction in life.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to be famous. I thought, like, the most important thing was getting an Oscar, or, getting known in all the comedy circles. And, like, based on where I was in my career at the time, I was actually on a pretty good trajectory. But I just started realizing I didn't want to take part in what I would now call, like, the dumbing down of society, and so on and so forth.
How
So
so? What would you say is the dumbing down of society? How would you describe that? Like, is that
oh,
in terms of media that we're told and like, lies that politicians tell people is like, yeah,
yeah,
your issues are based on immigrants. And it's like, no, they're based on your poor management of
yeah,
services. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I would say this. I was I was under the impression that, well, it's a mixed bag because I've always been independent, but when I moved to New York, I started taking on this whole idea that um, because of my immutable characteristics, I'm a victim, and I need to get, quote unquote, them to change in order to get me the benefits that I'm looking for, apparently, right?
Mm,
So, and I started realizing that around 2013, 2014, I was starting to see a lot of just victim culture started really becoming big, and I would always be like, well, you're way more than that. You can do things. You got skills. I'm not just saying that to myself, but to other
yeah.
people, and nobody really wanted to hear that, and I was really having a hard time with it. And then you add to it, I was also making terrible choices. I was uh, drinking too much, doing drugs, those type of things. And I realized now it was coping mechanisms or numbing mechanisms and stuff like that,
For
right?
what you're
So I
feeling.
started
Yeah.
waking up. Yeah. And so I was waking up to that. And then in 2015 I left because I realized that the city didn't want somebody like me around, and
Mm,
so I needed to figure out what to do next. And it wasn't so much the city. I really do believe it was the industry that I was in. They were
yeah.
going a certain direction, and somebody who thinks like me just doesn't fit. So I was trying to find my own path.
Your own space. Yeah. Sort of
Mhm.
seeing where you can maybe not even
Mhm.
fit in, but just craft your own space where you can exist and
Yeah,
like-minded people can join and like or people that are even just like, that's cool. You do you.
yeah.
I'll do
I
me. Like we can all just do our own things and still exist nicely.
yeah. When I discovered that what I say to myself about myself creates my reality,
Mm,
it really changed things. I really couldn't buy into the victim mentality, and I just started assessing things differently. Like music started changing, like the way I listened to music changed. Like the lyrics of songs were just like, whoa, y'all been cluing us into this for a while.
you've been telling
It,
us. You've been drip feeding it for a while.
Exactly,
Like,
exactly. Like it wasn't just music. Like for
yeah.
example, like Bob Marley's "Redemption" song, which is still one of my favorite songs. He says, "Free yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can. Have no fear for atomic energy. None but ourselves can stop the time," or something like that. I might be messing up those lyrics, but when he says "free yourself from mental slavery," I was like, I've known that song since I was a little kid, and it
Yeah.
never caught until around this time. And I was like, okay, I need to free myself. Um, I started realizing that like the whole dream of living in New York City and all that type of stuff we were actually prisoners of our own selves in that city. And I just had to free myself.
So I guess from what I'm hearing, sort of like the industry, like and the city sort of just made it like it was sort of, as we said, it's the city that never sleeps. So you're sort of
Mhm.
probably always on, like either you might be performing or you might be doing a comedy night, or one day you're going out for drinks and then you got acting in the morning, and then but everyone also is absorbed in this sort of bubble. Um, and like for you, something sort of just clicked for you. Something just started to change, and you're like,
Yeah.
nah, this can't be me. Like I need to go figure myself out. So how did you go figure yourself out then?
Well, uh, me figuring myself out again started around 2014. Um, in 2015, there was some BLM protests that were going on, and uh, I I realized that the narrative that the news was saying about what was going on wasn't true at to what my eyes were seeing.
Mm.
Um, and I couldn't help but notice how so many people in that city believed the same thing that the news was saying. I was like, but I was just marching with you guys, and this is not at all what happened.
This is not what
And so I was like, okay, I need to stop. So I moved back home again, like I said earlier. I moved back home for a little bit just to breathe and see what was my next move and stuff. And I became an artistic director in a theater. And as I was there, I was helping others create art, create work, using the skills that I learned in New York City to help others in the Houston area. And as I was doing that, I just realized that, yeah, I really do have the ability of creating my reality. I can have what I want. I can manifest things just by declaring it and deciding that that's who I am. Um, and I really just started putting that into my spiritual practice. I started praying every day, and by praying, is to go within and find my oneness with God, and then through that, I just I just started doing things.
Yeah.
I was creating things, I was doing things, and then I decided I wanted this like job that paid me more than I'd ever wanted more than I'd ever been paid before, and to do something so ridiculous, and I ended up uh, getting this one gig that just like kind of changed the trajectory of how I approach life.
Mm.
And
What
then
was
like,
the gig, if you don't mind me asking?
yeah, I got a job with this marketing company doing word of mouth marketing, which is something I'd never really heard of before. And it what, basically my job was to go around the city of Houston and interact with people, everyday people, just
Oh,
have conversations, talk to them, and then if they were interested in hearing anything about what I was up to, I would then tell them what I was up to, which was uh, basically my job was to teach people about the flu virus and how to prevent it.
oh, okay.
And we were working for some pharmaceutical device company and doing all that. But it was awesome. It was an awesome job, literally perfect for me, like my personality and all that type of stuff. And then some months, literally months after starting the gig, they promoted me to market manager, moved me up to Chicago.
Wow. Low. He was on the streets, now he's up in the office, guys. Come on.
Yeah,
Come
yeah,
on.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I was still in the streets of Chicago, but I got to make my own schedule. I got to do my
Yeah.
own things. These are things that like you always dream about, like that you get to, get a nice gig and that lets you do your own thing and you get to be your own boss. I mean, I had a boss, but
Yeah.
he didn't live in Chicago, right? And I was on my own.
So it's kind
And
of like you,
then
you you have someone to answer to, but like they're not there. So it's like I'm okay. I'm okay.
yeah,
If
we
he
met
comes
we met
in, we'll just tell him it's cool. Yeah, it's cool.
yeah,
See you later.
yeah. We met like once a week. And by meet it was on the phone, and by that it was just like, Jerry, you're doing a good job. I was like, yeah, okay.
Cool. Thanks.
So yeah, except for the times that I wasn't doing a good job, but
Yeah.
that's a story. That's a story for another day.
That's a longer phone
um
call.
yeah, exactly. Like, there's only one time it was like I'm specifically remember one time that he got on my case, and I was, again, I was still in this spiritual journey, so I was still trying to figure out a lot of things. So that had a lot to do with it. But other than that, man, it was just good. It was just good. Like
Mm.
it was when I started really taking responsibility for what I'm creating in my life, things started changing for the better. Um, I mean, obviously there were some, things that would slough off or break down because I wasn't that guy anymore.
Yeah.
And, you had to integrate a lot of that, the newness that I was creating for myself. But yeah, that's how I did that. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. You did. I guess there was just I guess it was a sort of a lot of change for you.
Yes,
And
there was a
that
lot of change.
yeah, and that the fact but that you're willing to embrace that change though, because the fact is that you decided, okay, this living here in New York is not for me, and you were able to go back to Texas and then sort of reinvigorate your creative side in theater and helping others also develop their creative aspects of themselves too. And and then we talked about this dream job that you got.
Mhm.
But I think in all of them, your creativity was definitely being shown in sort of different ways. And one thing actually, which I wanted to ask in terms of, we talked about you being in radio, you being on in TV and theater and stuff, and marketing. So you've been all around the creative industry. I wanted to find out sort of what lessons have you taken from being within the creative industry?
Mm, that's a good question. Well, one thing that I've picked up through the years is that everybody's in a creative industry. I don't. That was one of the most annoying things I would hear. Just like, Jerry, you're creative, but I could never be creative. I'm like, nah. Accountants are creative.
Exactly. You're very creative.
Very creative. I mean, they do things that I can't do. I know this sounds ridiculous, but dude, the way they make Excel spreadsheets and all that stuff, and they have to do the coding,
Yeah,
and
I feel you. I feel you.
well, how did you even come up with that? How did you do that? That's what creativity. We all do it. We all wake up and we all create. We create our breakfast, we create our relationships, we create the clothes we're going to wear today. And I mean, maybe you didn't physically sew the shirt, but you were creative enough to go to the store and be like, hey, that will look good on me.
Yeah.
That's a creative act. It's a creative act to come up with that compelling email, that sales letter, right? It's a creative act to I have clients that are like stay-at-home moms. It's a creative act to come up with that curriculum you're going to teach your children. It's all creativity. And when I started realizing that creativity is more than just theater or music, it really changed my approach to how I interact with other human beings, because I realized that we're all creating. Like right now, we're creating.
Yeah.
Just in
Yeah.
conversation, right? So, but I think I really picked that up when I was a big chunk of my training was in improv in New York City, and we would do corporate trainings and things like that. So that's when I really started realizing that everybody is creative,
Yeah, no
and
way. Yeah.
trying to convey that to people who would say that they're not creative was a challenge. But I was like, you even saying that is you saying I can't create is a creative act. So yeah, that's that would probably be the biggest thing that I learned, was that just because I was a theater nerd or in the quote unquote creative industry did not make me the special creative. I realized that everybody was creative.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. Like even when because I work in sort of social care settings, and they're always like, yeah, try and get creative with your solutions. It's one because they don't have money to buy stuff, but you've got to be creative. You've got to think of something else. You've got to think of a different way of approaching something. You've got to think of a different way of how you can engage a kid. Like, how are you going to maybe use play or use toys or, use maybe movies, and there's ways that we can all be creative in whatever role we're doing. Like you said, the accountant, like one of my friends is an accountant, and whenever she tells me some of the stuff that they're doing, I'm just like, that just goes over my head. Like, but you know, like you said, they can get creative. I mean, we saw the banks get creative in 2010, so everyone can get creative in their own ways.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's good for people to be able to hear, because I think it can help you then in different stages of your life, like how you use creativity as a parent, how you use creativity as a friend. Like, I think there's different ways then you can approach it and be like, okay, this is what I can do to do this.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I get it that people have this idea that a creative is like, a creative is somebody who works in a creative industry, which is just circular definition. Uh, but in actuality, creativity is using your imagination to solve a problem. It's just using your idea, your imagination to come up with new ideas. It's not this mystical thing that people can't do. It just is that's just what it is.
Yeah, that's a great definition for it as well. It doesn't sort of cancel out anybody, but then also at the same time just allows for the freedom of expression, isn't it? Like Jeff Bezos, look at Amazon. He found a solution. He saw a problem, created it. Who would have ever thought you could have had trucks all over the world and like moving warehouses and all of this? That takes imagination, that takes creativity. Like, so I think that's a good way to see it.
I think what he said was Jeff Bezos, if I'm not mistaken, when he first started Amazon back in like 95 or 96, he said that he wanted to create the ultimate store, but he couldn't create the ultimate store. So he said, I'm going to create the ultimate bookstore. And so it all started off with this online bookstore that you could literally come to with one click. Your book will be there in a handful of days. And then that's why he was able to create Amazon, because he actually had this whole idea from the get-go. Remember, the imagination, this whole idea that's the one-stop shop to get everything that you needed. But obviously he didn't have the means to do that. So he started with what he could. And he got creative.
And they go, yeah, exactly. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. To imagine, he also could have never, like, we would have never had Amazon if he was like, well, I can't create the ultimate store, so I'm just not gonna bother.
Just not gonna do it.
Like, and then who knows what the world would look like without Amazon? That would actually be really weird.
It'd be, I mean, I sometimes wonder, I was like, well, somebody would have, right? I don't know. And sometimes I'm just like, somebody would have. I don't know. I don't know.
It would have definitely been different. We never know. But like, yeah, someone, you would have had to think, okay, if he's not going to do it, maybe just redevelop later. I don't know.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder about ideas. I do believe that we're actually swimming through a sea of ideas, and we kind of we catch them, and then we either do something with it or we just let it go. Like we just caught a catfish and just released it. Because there are things that I've thought about that now exist today that when I was like 20, that I was just like, oh, this should be a great idea, but I don't know how I'm going to do it. And I just don't bother. And, and so it's just like,
someone else does it. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when I was in college, I was a waiter. I was a waiter, and I was really annoyed with having to we had repeating customers, a lot of repeating customers, obviously, right?
Yeah, everyone, you like the regulars, they bring you the money, but they can stress you out though.
Yeah, because I know what they're going to order.
Yeah,
but I still have to do the whole thing of going up to their table and asking them what do y'all want to order.
Yeah,
and they will order the same things. I was like, man, what would be awesome is if we could have like a little computer on the table, nothing too big because you want space to eat, but just something on the table to where they could just order and we just bring it right out to them. Like I never have to even ask them any questions, and I don't mess up their order or anything like that.
Yeah.
Right? I was like, and me and my friends were laughing about it. Oh, that'd be so cool. But like, how are computers ever going to be that small?
Where's my phone? Just looking at
exactly. Now we have the phone, and all you have to do is have a QR code and like take a picture of it, and you have the menu, and you just click on it, you know, all that type of stuff. And now it exists. So like again, back to the whole idea of there are ideas out. We have these ideas all the time. And what happens is our rational, logical mind negates it and says, well, if I look back on your history, there's no way you're going to be able to do this. And so your rational brain says, well, don't worry about it. Based on your history, there's no reason for you to do this. And so you just let it go. And it happens so quickly and automatic. And if you can learn that what's actually happening is your imagination is your primary faculty, you can actually go after things despite what your history says, and start creating things, and you know, and helping the world, or else somebody else is going to take the idea. Your ideas aren't original to you. You're just the one who's running with it or not.
Yeah, to be fair, I feel like there's no ever original idea. I feel like we sort of recycle things, but then they sort of just change over time. But you know what? It's quite unfortunate that as children, we dream, we imagine, we play, we build our own worlds and universes, and like you can just be anyone you want to be. Like even like I was talking to someone before this podcast, and I was saying, yeah, when I was a kid, I looked at how much social workers wanted to make, and I didn't want to be one because I was like, they don't make any money. But I was like, as a kid, I wanted to be like a DJ. I wanted to be an actor. I would still love to be, but not following. But I can, you know what? I can do it maybe in a different way. I can go around, but director. But like, I always loved movies. I loved TV. So like, actor and director, that was always something that I really wanted to do. Did I ever want to be an astronaut? No, but I'd love to be an astronaut now. I'd love to go to space just once. If Elon can go, why can't I? Like, just give us another 20 years or so. I'll be there. I'll be there. But for adults, for us as now, we think about these things and we're like, I can't do that. Like, I can't do this. But like, there was never that reservation as a kid. All there was you, your brain, and the rocks that were on the floor that you then thought, I'm like Magneto and I can control everything, like, or Professor X. And yeah, I miss sort of being able to have that innocence joy as a kid. And I do wonder how, because I think as adults, we 100% need to be able to tap back into that, to be able to let ourselves dream and let ourselves imagine what our lives can be, and then go and get it. Like, maybe that's also the best part about being an adult, is that we can still dream, but then we know how to go and get it. Or like, we can try. When you're a kid, you don't know how to go and be an actor. Your mum is the one that probably takes you around to all the acting coaches and stuff like this and that. As a kid, you don't know what to do. But as an adult, you can dream and hopefully put a plan to it. That's what I'd like.
Yeah, like I said about the logical, rational part of your brain, as you get older, those start, just because of society, society, culture, all that type of stuff, we get stuck in our ways based on past occurrences and circumstances. And the more we give life to those past occurrences and circumstances, the more it hardens into effect. Whereas as a child hasn't learned their reasoning faculties. And so there's nothing there to limit them from creating this dream world that they want. But what happens is, as they get older, their parents say, stop dreaming, or their friends say, why are you doing that? You're such a dork, you're lame, whatever. And they're like, oh, no, you know what? You're right. I'm just going to fit in. And then you go and get your career doing more fitting in, right? The more you do that, the more you do that, the less you have trust in yourself. The less you have trust that you have any ability of doing anything grand or awesome. Like if you really want to like go to space or whatever it is, if you came to me as a coach, if you came to me as a coach, I would say, well, then do it. I wouldn't even, I was like, yeah, but like, yeah.
I was already thinking of the buts. I was already like, but I just,
yeah. And yeah, but is the rational, logical brain. It is what keeps you stuck in your way. And from my studies, from my experience, I can tell you that if you say you want to be a specific type of person, it doesn't matter how old you are, and you have the willingness to persist in the knowing that you are that person, you will be that person.
Yeah.
And so if it is that you want to go to space, I'd be like, well, then go to SpaceX.
Yeah, true.
Go. You know, I mean, actually, I wouldn't ever tell anybody what to do.
Go and find Elon.
but the fact of the matter is, go there. If you want to be in space, first thing I would tell you is then you're an astronaut. You'd be like, yeah, but I can't. I was like, no, but you are. If you want to be, then you are. It's not, I don't know how long it's going to take you to get there, but you are. That's no ifs, ands, or buts. If that's truly your desire, then you are that person. Then I would say, as a coach, obviously, as I'm working with them, is like, why haven't you gone and seen if you can be a janitor at SpaceX? You know, why haven't you gone and worked for, you know, a rocket company or something, just to get in the vicinity of those people,
of the dream? You know what I'm saying? Definitely. Like, because once you're around them, then your thinking's already going to start changing, isn't it? Because then you're like, oh, like I'm in the building, like, oh, okay. You're gonna, and then you can meet the scientists and you can chat with them. And then you're getting excited because you're looking at all of this and you're like, oh my gosh, like, look at it. This is gonna go onto Mars. Like, so yeah, you know what? So do you think it's, as you're saying, in terms of when you're coaching, if someone says they want to be something and you say, okay, this is what you want to be, if this is who you want to be, then you're it. Like, is it, I don't know, is it that easy to just believe that? Or like, I'm just thinking, like, for myself, like, okay, if I say I want to be this, if I say I want to do this, does that mean I'm there? I'm not there, obviously. I know where I want to be. But can I start calling myself it if I'm not there yet?
I'm not saying that you go around going telling people that you're an astronaut.
No.
what I'm saying is that within yourself, you must know that you already are that person, despite what the external world is saying. And in fact, I wouldn't even say go and try to change the external world to see you that way, because that's insane. What I am saying, though, is it's almost like Kanye West. When Kanye West first started in the rap industry, he knew himself to be the best rapper, best producer. You know, no one's going to stop him. And then he would tell people, because he would tell people because he knew it inside himself, right?
Yeah.
And everybody would be like, "No, what are you talking about? You're lame. You're not from the streets. You know, you're not doing this, that, and the other." And it didn't matter to him. Why? Because he already was that person, right? Now, if you're going around being like, I'm going to be, all you're going to get is I'm going to be. All you're ever going to get is I'm going to be. So you have to start seeing yourself before anybody else can see you as that type of person, because the only person who will ever actually know it is you.
Yeah. You got to change the language to I am rather than I'll be, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
The path.
And it's so subtle. And you asked if it's that easy, and it's how does my mentor say it? He's like, it's simple, but it ain't easy.
Okay, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, because it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, and the
Nothing
reason
good is
why
easy. But
and the reason why it's not easy is only because you have to train yourself to see yourself that way, which is not easy. Because, like I said, the rational logical says, no, you're not. No,
there's no evidence to prove that. What
there's
have you been
no
doing,
evidence.
mate?
There's no. Why would? What would give you the audacity to think that that's true? It's like there's no proof. There's no proof, and there won't be proof. There's never proof. There's never proof.
Yeah. So you've just sort of got to dare to dream, and then just be able to figure out how you're going to get there next, whether you do get a mentor, or whether you seek advice from somebody to support you with that. Or, I mean, I think the good thing about sort of the world we live in now is that there's so many resources out there that you can already start to make the next steps to what you want to become, which I think is quite fantastic. I wanted to just ask you in terms of, I wanted to stick on creativity, but I wanted to focus it on how it's impacted you as a father. And I also guess, could you just tell me a bit about your family and you guys also now living in Hawaii too? Make us all jealous, please.
Well, I mean, what's funny about being a father, being a dad is I've definitely taken life a little bit more seriously. Just because I want my son to, or my sons, I have two sons. I want them to. I don't want to see the spark die in them. So, I try my best to remind them how awesome they are. Remind them that they can. My son loves to say he can't.
No such word. I remember hearing that.
Like,
no such word.
No, sir. I don't know. My son, my oldest son, he's 6, and he's super easy. He's not a handful. So I don't know. I think he makes it very easy to be a dad.
Yeah.
But as far as creativity is concerned, I come from the creative industry, so I have an easy time with kids. Like I love them because they imagine. We get to play games, all those type of things. I think the hardest thing for me to do is teaching him discipline, because as a creative, discipline is like a non-existent thing. No, I'm kidding. It is, but it's kind of different, right? It's like, oh, well, just do your thing. And I'm realizing as he gets older, it's like, no, I have to create boundaries. I have to create discipline and all those type of things. But yeah, I mean, I'm doing that for myself, so why wouldn't I do that for him? So that's on that tip of being a father. I just I can see my younger self in him, and so a lot of what I do is try to create myself to be the version that I would love him to be, and for him to follow. And if I had a daughter, it would probably be something along the lines of wanting to be the type of man, or I want to grow up to be the type of man that I would want my daughter to marry.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. And as long as I keep that in mind, or keep that in my imagination, I will always strive to moving towards that direction, right? But to answer your question about Hawaii, I manifested my living here. It really was a pretty awesome turn of events. I was living in Chicago, and this was during COVID. This is 2020, and I couldn't stand living in Chicago anymore. For 2 years, my wife and I had been talking about homesteading, living a more rural life, a simpler life,
Okay.
I've been living in cities my whole life, and I was like, I need to get to a simple life.
I'm
I just
done
want to
with
grow my
this.
own food. I'm done with it. There's nothing here for me. Y'all have all proven to me that y'all don't want me. So and so I for years my wife and I talked about, living like an hour outside of a city, just having a little plot of land, growing our own food, and
Yeah.
just living simple.
Got a bit of that
But we
best of
weren't.
both worlds, isn't it? We
Yeah,
can still drive to the
exactly.
city, but we can still do our own stuff.
Exactly. But we never made any moves. And then COVID happened, and yeah, man, the city just went
Dead.
a complete 180. Complete 180. I mean, and the thing is I saw it coming, but
Mhm.
when you see it, when you're aware of what's happening politically in the world, and then you see it physically happen, you're like, no,
Scary,
no, 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 no.
right?
I'm out. Uh, but again, it was starting to get really dire. Like crime was going up,
Mm.
and like our catalytic converter got stolen. A bullet came through our window, and had my
Hey.
wife not gotten up from dinner like 5 minutes prior, it would have gone right through her. Literally would have gone
Oh.
right through her. And we were in a nice neighborhood,
Hey.
and like the cops came and they couldn't care less. And I was like, this is not.
They've probably seen so much that week, isn't it?
Yeah,
They're like,
they were
oh,
just
this
like,
is
oh,
our
whatever.
seventh. Go on.
This happens. There's nothing we can do. Literally, they were just saying that to us. I was like, okay, well then,
Yeah.
there's no point in us living here then.
Bullets gonna
So
flying through windows, eh?
yeah, yes, it was crazy, man. And so I did what I teach people to do. It's like, all right, fine. You want to change? Don't go and try to change the world. Change yourself. So what I would do is I would go, I would literally go into the closet like scripture says,
Mm.
and I would close the door. I would literally put blindfolds over my eye and earplugs in my ear, so I couldn't. I was completely removed from the outside world, and I would just pray on the feeling of home. I literally just meditated on home, and I just like, I'm home. I'm home. I didn't know where home was. I didn't know anything about that. All I knew was where I was living currently wasn't home.
Mm.
And so yeah, I did that for about a month and a half, and then a vision came in my meditation, and it was my son playing on some rocks, and I felt some tropical wind on my face, and I could see my knees. I was like, that's it. I'm there. I didn't know where there was, but I was like, I'm there.
Yeah, I'm
I'm
there.
there.
I'm
And
home.
so
I'm home.
yeah, I'm home. I'm home, and I let it go. And then a month after that, I woke up on January 8th. I woke up January 8th in the middle of the night thinking that I lived in Hawaii. I was like,
Mine?
What are you talking? What are you talking about? This is Chicago, and it's cold as hell, man. What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
and then the bullet just came through the window.
And then bullet starts getting no, no. It was cold as Chicago, and I was like, and I shook it off, and I grabbed my phone to see what time it was, and it said 3:30 in the morning, and there was a notification on it, and it said one-way tickets to Honolulu for $99. And yeah, I knew exactly
Oh,
what it meant.
yeah.
My whole internal dialogue knew exactly. My gut knew what it meant. My rational, logical brain was like,
What you
what are you
doing?
doing? This is crazy. What are you going to do? How are you going to do that? Only rich people live in Hawaii. You can't do that. What makes you think that? Blah, 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 blah. 15 minutes later, I bought 3 one-way tickets. And then I told my wife a couple hours later that we're moving in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I bought those tickets January 8th, and we moved to Hawaii on March 1st of 2021. And
Nice.
yeah, man, dude, it was like it was one of the things they even said to my wife was like, all right, because January 6th had just happened. So we
Oh,
just
you.
did the whole
Oh.
so we had just done the whole Black Lives Matter protests and riots
Yeah,
that were going on,
yeah.
right? And then the whole January 6th thing.
Then
So
this
now in my head, I'm
Capitol
like,
gets stormed, like
this country is about to go to shit. And so I said to my wife,
it's
I
a
was like,
powder
well,
keg.
yeah, it's a powder keg. It's literally going. And I said to my wife, I was like, well, if the world's going to end, at least let's do it in paradise.
Let's be,
And so
Palm trees helps. Palm trees help.
you know, hey,
Pineapples, you
they
know.
have the longest life expectancies in the state, and it's always beautiful and all
I'm
this stuff.
not
Anyways,
surprised. Not surprised.
that's all side story. But it was I literally took a leap of faith to get here. There was no reason for me to believe that we'd even find a place to live, bro.
Mm,
I didn't know anything about Hawaii. I legitimately thought the only people who live in Hawaii are Hawaiians and rich people.
yeah.
I that was it. I didn't even know black people lived here. I found
Yeah.
out black people live here after I moved. It took me 2 years to realize how many black people live here, and there's a good amount.
Yeah, there's quite a
Um,
few when I went. There's quite a few.
yeah,
There's quite a lot of diversity anyway, but I don't know whether I think that's just I don't know whether that was partially because it is a holiday destination. I think partially, but then it is also
depends where
America
you are. Yeah,
still, isn't it? So you still
yeah,
got quite
yeah,
a bit of diversity.
yeah. There. I mean, you're not going to find as many black people here in Hawaii as you would in Houston or Chicago or New York.
Yeah.
You know, those are pretty big black populations. But I mean, it's fine. No, I never wanted anybody to really see me that way. Anyways, I just wanted people to just see me for my merit and what I'm up to.
Mm.
And I mean, I know people see me as a black man, but I don't care, and they don't. It doesn't seem like they care that much here either. So I like it. They definitely don't care as much as they do in Chicago. That's for sure. So
Yeah, I'm sure of that.
yeah, yeah.
What is there to stress about when you've got palm trees swinging? Like you don't have time to be this saying, "Oh, you're black, you're this, you're that." Listen, just go for a swim in the ocean.
Yeah, just go take a dip in the spring, go in the ocean, sip a pina colada. No, no.
Yeah, you can't be mad.
Um,
I had too many
no.
margaritas when I was there, to be fair, but I was
I
enjoying myself.
I will say this though, and it doesn't matter where you live. You'll always be there. You can never escape yourself. That was probably one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the 2 years that I've moved here. Is it's like I I can't escape myself just because I live in Hawaii. It doesn't change anything.
Mhm.
Yeah, sure, the living arrangements are a little different. It is more expensive out here than well, it's not that much more expensive than it was in Chicago, but it is pretty expensive and all that. But it's still me.
Mm,
I'm the one who's creating my life. Yeah, I can't. There's no one for me to point my finger at. I can't be upset at anybody. Um, it's all within me. Everything I'm experiencing. So if I live here or live in Chicago, live in Saskatchewan or whatever, I'm still there and I'm still dealing with the messes that I create or not messes that
yeah.
I create.
Do you think though it is important like to sort of choose where you live? Like I remember I was reading Will Smith's book and he talked about how LA had such a vibe and just he always felt more motivated there. Like he said he always felt more creative there. Um I don't know. I don't know what it would have been about LA, but he was like he felt it's quite important to choose where you live. I think just as important as your partner. I think that's what he put in his book. So I thought,
I
okay,
agree.
that's quite interesting.
I would agree with that. Yes.
Mm,
Um, Despite what I said, I would agree with that. The thing is, when you are choosing your place, just like you would your partner, there are certain things that you need, and there are certain things that are in line with your ideal,
mm,
right? So if you have a standard or ideals or whatever, like of course Will Smith liked LA. He's an actor. Like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
if I don't live in a city, but that's because I want a homestead,
Mm,
right? So everybody's different. Everybody's looking for something different. You are the quote, you are the summation of the five people you hang out with the most, right? Well, it's true. It's also true that the rise and fall of of a nation or the rise and fall of a city can be determined by the rise and fall of the ideas of those people. So, if you are in a particular industry that you really want to be in, yeah, you're going to go to that city or go to that area that most of those people are. If you really like tech,
yeah,
you move to Northern California.
yeah.
You know what I mean? If you really like crumpets, you go to London. Like,
if you like cold weather,
yeah,
and come here too.
and but that said, again, back to the whole rise and fall of ideas. The ideas of certain areas or communities or whatever let you know what you're going to get when you get into those areas.
Yeah.
And I always thought that I wanted to live in Chicago. I always thought that. Like since I was like in high school or something. I always thought I would live in Chicago someday. And then when I moved to Chicago, I immediately figured out that Chicago and Jerry do not mix. But
I guess
it was because of the ideas that they held.
Yeah.
It was because of the ideas that they held.
Mm-hmm. And also you would have never known if you didn't go. You had to sort of go to be like, okay, yeah, no, don't like it. Don't like this bullet coming through my window or the cold.
No, not at all. No, I didn't like the bullet coming through my window. I didn't like the excuses that people would make when crime was happening. I just didn't like Chicago. I mean, it's a beautiful town, beautiful place to visit. I'm going to be going there in a couple weeks. So I'm not here to bash cities. I'm not here to bash anything. I'm just saying that you need to know yourself first and foremost. You have to know yourself. Also, I would recommend to folks, travel. If you have the means, well, you don't even need the means. Figure out a way to travel and meet people in different towns, different places, and you'll see for yourself that, oh, there is culture and in different towns and different places. And what is culture? Culture is the
I guess culture, the norms and values of the place.
The norms and values of a place. Exactly. And do they jive with yours? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know what? One thing which I think at the end of our trip to Hawaii, my mom asked us, it was like, oh, what was one thing that sort of Hawaii showed you? And I was like to them, because I had expressed to them that I'd love to go and live in Australia one day, because I'm always looking at YouTube channels of like property in Australia, and it just looks absolutely lush, and it looks like the sort of living I would want for my house, in terms of I'd love to have just a seamless between outdoor and indoor. And when I was in Hawaii, I was like, oh, the weather's lush, it's warm, I'm getting darker, like I can swim in the ocean and it's just bliss. Like it's completely different. Like Hawaii was completely different to what the UK is.
Oh yeah.
And you just feel happier. Like, and one thing as well, which we notice, is like people seem to do more things outside with each other. Like people were having barbecues on the Sunday. Like you saw families like look like they do this every weekend. Like they got big ass tents, barbecues, people are playing volleyball. And I'm like, that's how I want to spend my Sunday. Like as much as I like England, like I love heat. Like heat is just something which is core to my bone. Like my parents were from Zimbabwe. Like I was born there. Like I lived in England all my life, but like for them, they've grown up in heat all their life. So it's like, I don't know what my life will look like if I go to Australia, but I'm nervous. Like, can I still do Black and Raw and still do that? But one thing which I said to myself is like, you know what? Sure, if you go to Australia and if you go and live there, then yeah, you haven't got London close to you. You haven't got America, which is close to you. But I was like, I just have to make myself loud enough and big enough that they still have to contact me from wherever I am. So, but I don't know what my life will look like, but it's something I've got to try, definitely. And just because of the weather, I think it's a game changer because you're outside more, you're doing activities more outside. Like there's just a lot more that can be done in nicer weather, and everyone's happier in nicer weather. It's just what it is. Like,
I'll say this about Australia. I've been to Australia twice, Melbourne to be exact, and it's beautiful over there, but it gets cold. It does get cold.
Okay.
And because it's closer to Antarctica than any other than maybe South America might be closer to Antarctica, but Australia's pretty damn close. Sydney and Melbourne are towards the southern part. Well, Melbourne's on the south, and then Sydney's close to the south. So you're going to get cold weather there, that's for sure. So I just want to put that out there.
No, put that out there. Yeah. I get that. I'm like, what's going on, guys? What is this? Am I in England?
Yeah, but it also gets super hot there. So that just, I love Melbourne. Melbourne's beautiful, 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 beautiful area. But about Hawaii, yeah, man, there's something that Hawaiian people call mana, and it's basically the spirit here. And of course, aloha culture, and they take things a little slower here. We have a thing called Hawaii time, which I can't stand. It's no different. It's no different than CPT, bro. But it seems to work here because that's just most of the islands, they're islands, so you could easily get caught up in traffic. Like there could be an accident and you just have to sit there and there's nowhere for you to go, so
you just chill,
you just chill. I remember the first accident that we found. We didn't get an accident, but we got caught behind an accident. We were like, screw it, we'll just go to the beach. And we just went to the beach, just chilled and waited for the so
yeah, it helps. Yeah, listen. We don't have to be stuck in this traffic, guys. Let's just go.
let's just go chill somewhere. And man, it's lovely out here. The people here have really embraced us where we live. And honestly, what I would say to anybody who's listening is wherever it is that you are intending to bring your family or live or whatever, go within, pray, and see what's in store for you. I like I said, I didn't know anything about this place when I moved here. I just followed intuition. I followed my prayer, and this is where it brought me in. So of course I'm having a great time and being blessed. And I try not to forget. I try not to forget that this is what I asked for.
Yeah. It's definitely. And I think that just that gratitude to have to yourself. I don't know if you know Catherine Ryan, the comedian. She's Canadian, but she lives in Britain now. But I was listening to her on the High Performers podcast this morning, and she was just talking about how I think her manager was like, never forget this moment when you're on the come up, because he was like, don't forget this feeling, because it's at one point it's just going to sort of plateau and you're going to become it's going to be norm to you. He was like, always be grateful for what's going on. And I think for you, I think you've shown that anyway, to be honest with you. But I think that's just super important for anyone to take, is that there is things to be grateful for in your life. And just to see that. And even when earlier we talked about victim mentality, like there's just easy ways which you can actually be like, okay, no, what are my strengths actually? Like, why am I focusing on what's going bad for me when I can actually, okay, I do have this, I do have that. I have a good family. Not everyone has a good family. Like, and then you just start to think of things that be like, okay, yeah, maybe I'll whine a bit less. But just that change in mentality can be so useful for us.
Yeah, for sure. Also recognize, I mean, you're from Africa, or your family's from Africa. My family's from Africa. When I realize like this is also a big part of why I couldn't do the New York City thing, and why I don't like victim mentality is because I have cousins that are nowhere near as privileged as I am. Don't have anywhere near the accommodations, amenities, all these things that we can easily take for granted over here in the West. And I know my grandfather could only dream of living the way I live today. And why in God's name would I ever want to be a victim? It would be besmirching him and my cousins back home, because I'm not I'm not doing anybody a favor by being like, oh, the system's oppressing me, or
woe
it's
is me.
Woe is me. It's these people's fault that I'm not doing well. I was like, well, no, actually, that's not true. It's your fault. And well, it might not be your fault. That's not what I'm saying. I shouldn't retract my words. It's not to say that it's your fault, but it is your responsibility. It doesn't necessarily mean it's your fault, but it is your responsibility. The fact that you are here right now means that you can be creative and create something for yourself to get you in a better situation. The very fact that any of us, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what race you are, doesn't matter what sex you are, the very fact that you are here today, you owe this to everybody else who's come and gone, good or bad. We wouldn't be here had the things that happened in our history had not happened. No one has been able to convince me otherwise. And it's just like, as atrocious as some of the things that have happened in the world's past have been, I'm only comparing that to the way we live today. I know for a fact that 100 years, 200 years, 1,000 years from now, they're going to look at this time as this atrocious time period that I can't believe that they sat on their computers with headphones on and did that. That's so barbaric. Like,
honestly, these guys were backwards. They could talk to anybody in the world over Zoom. We can just, like, I don't know, screen ourselves. I have no idea. What it looked like. But yeah, they will. And they'll be like, oh, they really let Putin get away with that? Dude, you weren't there. You weren't there.
You weren't there. Well, it's crazy because, like, look, I love history. One of my friends, he's from London. As we're talking, I keep thinking of him. He's like, he's going to, just because of the conversations I have with him, he would always push back on my view of the world, because I'm very optimistic. But I'm like, look, when you look back on history, just any history, let's, like, bring up Napoleon, for example. In his time, the things that he did, we today would consider just awful things. But in his time, it was super progressive. Like, that dude put down the aristocracy and gave freedoms to all sorts of people in France and in Germany and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
That today Europeans absolutely take for granted. But back then, the people who were in power thought that this dude was going to fuck everything up. Excuse me.
I mean, he was kind of did, though, didn't he? A little bit.
But if he didn't, we wouldn't be where we are today.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, that's the thing that people don't realize, is that, like, our whole civilization, human civilization, has been about war and conquest and debating ideas. That's all it's ever been. No one's ever gotten it right. No one will ever get it right. All we can do is go from moment to moment to moment and take what we think is beneficial and drop the things that we think are not. Yeah. We don't need to go and bitch and complain and say, look what they did, look at all these awful things. It's like, well, then don't do those things. Simple as that.
But yeah, it's a weird one. I feel like I agree with you in terms of I'm quite an optimistic person just in general. I always try and see what good can be looked at from something. But you know what? It's funny enough. I was having a conversation with my cousin. We always have conversations about this. and we're like, history often repeats itself. Like, you know, we see similar events, like, you know, Putin with Ukraine. We've seen Russia do the same thing. We've seen Germany do the same thing. We've seen other people. I mean, we've seen the US do atrocious things in South America. And now we're seeing China do atrocious things to weaker Muslims, like in the name of terror, war on terror, America. It all repeats itself, but for some reason we keep ticking along. Like I feel like we always come out of it. I don't know if we come out of it better, but definitely different. We've learned some lessons, but then we're not, I don't know, it's slow progress. Like we said, who knows, in 1,000 years' time, they might be looking at us like, these barbarics, did they not know they could get rid of nukes this easy? Like, who would have thought?
Yeah, it was like, why did they even invent nukes in the first place? Man, you know, the Chinese people revere Genghis Khan. Blows my mind as to why that would be. This dude was a warlord. He ransacked places, totally just demolished towns and this and the other. But the Chinese, the Asians, they wouldn't be who they are had he not done what he did. It's one of those things that it's so easy to say those people were so bad or so barbaric. But the only reason why you're thinking that is based on where you are today. You know, like, and it's just, it's nuts to me. Do you know that the steam engine, it's not actually a new invention. It's actually an ancient invention, the steam engine. It was created by the Greeks back in the BCs. And it was just like, it was like a little toy thing that they would put water in and have a little fire underneath, and then we'd have these pipes that would come out of it and it would spin. But it was a useless invention back then. They couldn't do anything with it because they didn't have the means. They didn't have the
infrastructure to like
they didn't have the infrastructure, and they didn't have the need for it. And the reason why they didn't have the need for it is because there was slavery going on. The slaves could do stuff. The people who invented this stuff were just doing it because it was like a thing they could do. Cut to the 1800s. Yeah, the 1800s in England, they're creating this whole steam engine movement, right? The Industrial Revolution and all this stuff. And they did that because they needed a more efficient way of creating things. There was no slavery in England. So it's like they had to do it because they could, like, they needed to do it. But the thing was, it wasn't invented in the 1800s. It was invented in ancient history. But the reason why it never took is because it wasn't needed at the time. So we've all had the ability of doing all these crazy things. The things that we're going to be able to do 1,000 years from now, 2,000 years from now, there's probably some kid who's tinkering on a thing that it will never be picked up for another 2,000 years. But that's just how we are as humans. We move slowly day after day. We don't think about the last 20 years. We don't think about the last 80 years. We don't think about the last, you name it. Only reason why we ever think about any of the things of the past is because we know it will benefit us today to get one over on somebody. You know, it's just like, well, look at the way y'all treated us back then. It's a move. It's a rhetorical thing. But if you actually look at history as a holistic event, you start to realize that, yes, history repeats itself, but the reason why it does is because we forget. That's the only reason why.
Yeah, and that definitely. And you know what? I will say, in terms of when you said that, the things that they used to do back then were maybe viewed as worse. Slavery, obviously, awful. But I remember I was listening to this podcast. It was called is it The Intercept? they were talking about America's war on terror and how America has actually been in war for the past 20 years. But it's like
a lot longer than
it's
that.
yeah, a lot longer than that. But it's like it's hidden. It's like because sometimes there's no American troops on the ground, then they don't class it as a war. And they were saying, do they not think it's more inhumane that there's a drone flying over your house and you know it's there, you can hear it, and at any time it could just obliterate your whole family, like, or you could be at a funeral or you could be at a wedding and something can happen. Like they're like, how is that more humane than what we've been doing? And people and often it's, you know, people that aren't involved in the Taliban, often just sort of innocent people. So it's a weird one. It's just also how things get phrased over time as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Propaganda is a son of a bitch.
Definitely. And it's done by everybody. So it's done by everybody.
America is the leading empire right now, but it's no different than any other empire. Your people had an empire. And they did some awful things. If you were to look at, you know, what they did in India or what they did in Africa.
Oh, the partition is absolutely disgusting, honestly. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
But then look at what happened with the Britons, right? They were a colonized people as well. So it's
the Swedes, wasn't it? And all of the Nords.
I think it was the Nords, but definitely the Romans. The Romans,
yeah, Romans, yeah, true.
You know, right? So, and then Rome was a conquered people. Like everybody, I don't know. I have not read any bit of history that has proven to me that people weren't conquered before. Like everybody conquered somebody. And so I don't buy in. That's why I don't buy into the victim narrative, because everybody is trying to get one over. Everybody wants what's best for their people.
Yeah. No, definitely. So Jerry,
for Black people, I'll specifically say this for Black people. If you're so, and I'm not this guy, but if you're so concerned about bettering your people, just stop being a victim. Stop perpetuating victimhood. Find the best attributes of other cultures and take those attributes on for yourself and teach your boys and girls to take on those attributes and be the best that no one can deny. Be the best that no one can deny and rule. That's as simple as that. If that's truly what you want the best for your people, then you need to be the best and not complain that other people are doing better than you, because every conqueror has never, ever, ever thought somebody was better than them.
That's true. That's very true. I was going to ask sort of my final question, which is, say if your two young boys were listening to this conversation, how can something that you know add to an understanding of themselves? I don't know if you just said it. I was almost about to end the episode there, but I thought, let me at least tell him the question so he can decide whether he wants to answer it or that was his answer.
Yeah. Can you ask the question one more time?
Yeah, no, that's fine. My brain is just, I'm so tired. I don't know if you could tell.
No, I couldn't. Stop being a victim.
Oh, Lord.
I'm kidding.
I'm kidding. Right, give me a sec. So say if your two young boys were listening to this conversation, how can something that you know help them with an understanding of themselves?
Yeah, I would say you are divine. You are divine. God gave you a gift of mind and speech. Use them to the best of your ability. Stop making excuses and just imagine better than the best you know.
Bro. No, I love it. So no, thank you very much, Jerry, for coming on to the Black and Raw podcast. It's been good to chat with you. I think this is, no, it hasn't been my longest episode, but it's definitely been one of my longest episodes. But I always love long episodes, so it's all good.
Good. I'm glad to know I wasn't just blathering on.
No, I think we talked about some good things. And listen, I get on tangents anyway. If anything about the Black and Real audiences, they should just know that I get on tangents myself. So it is what it is.
I thought it was a great conversation, and I think your audience is gonna have a lot of food for thought.
100%, 100%. So yeah, no, well, Jerry, thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a good day.
Aloha.
Aloha. Oh, mahalo, isn't it?